Well, David, thanks for joining me again. It was great to talk to you last time, and it's great to see you again here today. So thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think it'd be great for you to talk to the listeners and walk us through your a little bit of your own personal self-development journey. I know you were living on a sailboat. Your upbringing was in Canada. Talk to us about that time of your life, your own struggles with anxiety, sadness, and feeling alone. Talk to us about that time and basically your journey of how it led to you here.
Sure. So yeah, basically my journey growing up was trying to figure out how to feel good. I mean, I saw everyone around me. I saw this thing called happiness. I saw love. I saw people enjoying life. And here I was living on a sailboat, sailing around to the beautiful Gulf Islands of Vancouver Island. And on the outside, everything looked amazing. But inside, I was always feeling like something was missing. I felt lost. I felt alone. I felt constantly sad and I didn't know why. And yet, when I looked around, I saw people who were happy and I knew there was such a thing as happiness. It seemed like there was this thing called fulfillment, but I didn't know how to access it. And so that kind of became my singular focus. Since I was very young, I was always asking myself, who am I? What's my purpose? Why am I here? And these questions were kind of going in circles like a broken record in my mind. And so at that point, it kind of reached a breaking point. And so I decided I need to find the meaning of happiness. I want to find the meaning of life. I want to understand what this is all about and how to actually feel good. And I didn't know where to start searching for the mysteries of the universe. And so I decided to go to the biblical land of Israel, where I ended up studying the ancient success wisdom of Kabbalah. And that's kind of what got me started on my journey to discovering how to feel better, how to live a fulfilling life, and how to create the kind of life that I really want to live.
Yeah, talk to us a little bit about Kabbalah because that was something that I was totally unfamiliar with. I had heard of the Torah, but explain to us what Kabbalah is.
Right. So Kabbalah in ancient Hebrew actually means to receive. And so this was the received tradition, the secrets of the universe, what I call universal success wisdom. And the Kabbalah is kind of like the building blocks for the universe. It's kind of like in the Matrix, the source code of the programming that underlies all of this world, all of the universe. And essentially, it's the mystical teachings of how to live a more fulfilling life, how to live a successful life. It's, if you will, the owner's manual for kind of this life that we've been given and how to make the most of it.
And you talk about the 10 energies that are discussed there. What are those 10 energies?
So that's an interesting question. So basically, when if you've ever seen like a prism and you shine white light through a prism and it diffracts into the seven component colors, right? And so too, according to Kabbalah, there is one life energy coming into this world and it's powering all of us, right? This is the light of the creator and all of the people on this planet and all of the life on this planet. We are all coming into existence and we all continue to exist through this infinite, what's called in Kabbalah, or Ein Sof, which literally means the infinite light. And so this infinite light, this life energy, is coming into this world and it's fueling all of us and it's giving all of us life in every moment. But now, just like the prism, when you shine that light through the prism, so when this infinite light comes into the world, according to Kabbalah, it also diffracts into 10 component energies. And so these 10 energies, which in Hebrew would be called the Sphirot, the energy, the light sources, the luminance, these 10 luminances, so they form the building blocks of the world that we're living in. And so these energies, if you see, we see them everywhere, right? Where we have the energy of strength, right? We have the energy of kindness, right? We have the energy of beauty. And like when you look at a beautiful flower and you know, it takes your breath away, right? So these are all part of the 10 component Sfirot. And what's powerful is that most of the time people would say that I think most of the time people believe that behavior is random, that, you know, each of us, we're kind of living life according to our own roadmap. And when we see people who are like us, well, like we like those people and we think those people are great. And when somebody possesses qualities that we admire, so, you know, we think that's an amazing person. And yet when we see somebody who's not like us, who behaves differently, they kind of seem strange or even weird. And so, what's so interesting about these 10 energies is that just like they're the building blocks of the world that we're living in, they're also the map of behavior. And like I started saying about my journey, I was really searching for a lot of meaning for myself. I felt very, very different than everyone who was close to me. And I experienced a lot of intense emotions, a lot of ups and downs. And I was just very, very sensitive to everything. I was sensitive to energy, sensitive to people. And I couldn't find anyone in my circle who was like me that could give me guidance. I mean, you know, I had loving parents, you know, I have a sister and I had friends, but none of them seemed to really model the same experience of life. And so I just came to the conclusion early on that there must be something wrong with me. You know, I felt fundamentally different from everyone that I knew. So I just thought that there was something wrong with me. And that was obviously very painful and very difficult. But that's also what drove me to kind of go on this quest to find these answers. And so what I discovered is that these 10 energies, they also make up the building blocks of behavior. And what I mean by that is that everybody you meet is coming through one of these 10 energies. And why that's so powerful is because each one of them has their own strengths and their own challenges, their own weaknesses. So, example, somebody coming through the energy of Chesed, of kindness, right? They have a natural superpower for kindness and they feel great when they're helping other people. They're very intuitive to other people's needs and they feel best when they are helping other people get their needs met. And so these people make, you know, they can make great teachers, great doctors, great therapists, wonderful parents because they're naturally attuned to the emotional needs of, you know, the people who are closest to them. And at the same time, you know, they also get stuck in the same place where, you know, their natural inclination is to give to others, and where they struggle is learning how to give to themselves and learning how to say no to others and say yes to themselves. So each person that you meet is coming through one of these 10 journeys. And so that kind of crystallized for me what the game of life is and how each person's journey is unique. And it really formed the basis of the work that I do now, which is helping people improve their lives, to get more of what they want out of life, and to dramatically increase the quality of their relationships. Because, you know, the people that we attract, well, if you're trying to make them into a version of yourself, which is what most people end up doing, so that can create a lot of struggle. So that's kind of the 10 Sfirot in a nutshell. And basically, I created a system around this in order to teach this to more people. It's really like a language. And so I call this system the personality code. And it's designed to help people understand their gifts, their strength, and to give them clarity on what their journey of growth and success looks like.
It sounds like once you have a better understanding of yourself and the primary energies that you tend to operate in, you're better able to map out where your next area of growth might be.
Yeah, 1,000%. A thousand
Yeah.
percent. And that's where, you know, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. I mean, certainly the people that come to me, If everything's going great in your life and your relationships are great and your business is great and you're waking up feeling happy and fulfilled, so you don't have a lot of desire for a coach. But where people end up coming to me is often when something's not going right, where they're coming up against the same challenges, the same patterns are repeating in their life. They're not happy at their work or they're not happy in their relationships. And so what's interesting about the personality code is that it really shortens the time that it takes to make significant breakthroughs in your life. And I also teach this system to therapists, and I'm shocked at how many therapists don't understand this system because it really breaks the different personalities and the different challenges down into a very logical structure. And it makes transformation a lot much simpler and also a lot faster.
So the 10 personality codes, um, is part of this work developing yourself so that you have access to the different other energies that might be useful in different situations or environmental events that happen in your life as well, like learning to how to inhabit those or draw upon different energies that might be more useful in different situations. Is that part of the work?
Great question. So I would say that, I think the question that everyone is asking, at least at some point in their life, is, what's my purpose? Why am I here? And, Maslow's pyramid, the highest level for every person is the desire to self-actualize, to feel the fulfillment of giving their greatest gifts to the world. And so at some point in all of our lives, if not constantly throughout our lives, I think most people end up asking, what is my purpose? And what's interesting is that every person has a unique, what I call personality code. They have a unique wiring stemming from these 10 energies and through other components that I describe more when I go into greater depth. But everyone has their own unique wiring. And the analogy I give is like there's one electricity that's flowing into your room right now, right? And it's powering your lights and your air conditioner and your coffee maker. But each one of those devices is wired in its own way, in its own unique way, to make use of that energy in perform a special function. So, when the electricity flows through the light bulb, well, it lights up the room. And when the energy flows through the coffee maker, it's able to heat the water and percolate the coffee. And fulfillment in life is when the light bulb, someone flicks on that switch and the light bulb experiences the flow of energy coming through it. And, it just lights up the room and it's like, and it says to itself, wow, I love being a light bulb. I love enabling all these conversations to happen in this room. I'm able to provide so much light and look at all this joy other people experience because of me. I just love being a light bulb, right? That's happiness and fulfillment. And what's sadness? What's frustration? When the light bulb spends its whole day looking over at the coffee maker and he's like, I just wish I could brew a cup of coffee. Look how happy coffee makes people. Look how it energizes them. Maybe if I could just channel the electrons in some way, maybe I could heat the water and I could, become a coffee maker, right? That's sadness. And so it's the same is true of us. We all have our own unique wiring and we all have our own unique gifts. And fulfillment and happiness is when we are utilizing those gifts in a meaningful way to contribute to the world and it feels fulfilling. That's what fulfillment is. Sadly, I think what happens most of the time is we often get caught up in comparing ourselves to other people, right? Society kind of directs us into certain life positions and end up putting us into boxes, and then we kind of end up being pushed to become like a certain acceptable model in society rather than being given the tools to discover what am I uniquely good at, what do I enjoy doing. And so what happens is we often fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to other people, and that's where lack of fulfillment comes in. So each of our, back to your question, our unique wiring, each of our unique journeys, our unique personality code. So we end up, it's kind of like we're all given one color, in a palette of 10 colors. And so, we all instinctively end up painting the canvas of life with our color. Somebody who's coming through the energy of kindness, so they're painting their canvas through the energy of kindness. And, it's all different, different shades of kindness, and they're looking for opportunities to be kind and to bestow kindness. And they're painting with this brush of kindness, and they do very, very well at it. And each of us becomes very skilled at utilizing our own color and becoming very, very expressive and very artistic with our color. But at some point that becomes limiting, because when we respond to life in the same way, it becomes robotic. And I would say that our unique pattern, our unique code, our unique color is kind of the unconscious way that we respond to life. But the truth is, there's 10 different energies. And so the question is, how much can you enjoy life if you're only painting with the same color? And so the goal of this whole system is to learn how to rise above this invisible prison of personality and learn to access all of the different energies so that we can respond to life from a place of the greatest choice possible. And maybe my superpower will always be kindness, or maybe my superpower will always be creativity and sensitivity. But if I'm able to kind of access the energy of confidence and power and success when I need it, when I'm also able to access the energy of strength and confrontation if I need it, right? That opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And ultimately, I think that's where we as human beings end up having the greatest freedom and the greatest experience of life, is that when we can learn how to access all of the energies. And that's really what this system allows. It allows you to kind of rise above the limitations of how you have see the world and how you have been conditioned to respond, and gives you just a whole lot more freedom to experience all of the many colors of life.
So it sounds like there's two parts then. Like part one is really identifying and honoring your kind of core energy, like your core purpose in life. And then part the second part is being able to access the different colors to kind of have a more, I guess, vibrant painting to actually paint, right?
Yeah, and I would always start with a question. What's not working? Meaning, what's not working in your life? Is it are you struggling with relationships? And then if your relationship is struggling, then we can approach it from that point of view. Meaning, helping couples, for example, where there's a lot of friction, helping them understand each partner's natural gifts and challenges, and giving them a path to work towards greater connection. If it's somebody who feels like they're always attracting opportunities or situations that are infringing on their boundaries and where they don't feel self-expressed, so then we can dive in to helping them come up with a roadmap to achieving more flexibility in that area. The way it kind of always tends to show up in people's lives is through the places that aren't feeling good in life, or the places that aren't working. And that's really where I like to focus, because that's where you can answer the question more specifically. Like, is there a certain challenge that your audience expresses or shares, or is struggling with, that you've encountered a lot in your time as hosting podcasts?
I think it varies from individual to individual, but certainly the major aspects in life, relationships, health, money problems, those three are probably the three big ones. You mentioned kindness a lot as one of the personality codes, and strength. and confidence. What are some other examples of the different personality codes?
Sure. So I call it one personality code, and then there's like 10 different energies. And so we have Yesod, which is we have Malchut, which is the energy of it's kind of like the vessel, right? Like if you look at a toaster, so a toaster is kind of like a vessel to make toast, and then one of the energies is above it is Yesod, which is kind of like the life force that flows through it. And then you have the energy of Tiferet, which is truth or beauty, often connected with success. You have Netzach, which is like strength or restraint. You have Hod, which is beauty, like when you look at a flower and it takes your breath away. You have Chochma, which is wisdom. And then you also have Bina, which is kind of like emotional wisdom, like the creative wisdom. And you also have Chesed, which I mentioned, and I forget how many I've numbered now. But those are kind of examples of all of them. And what's interesting is that so each person has a unique strength. So somebody coming through Chokhmah, they tend to be very cerebral and very analytical. They love to study. They love to study things. Somebody who's coming through Bina, which is emotional wisdom, so they tend to be very sensitive and very creative. Somebody coming through Tiferet, they tend to be very outgoing and success oriented. Somebody coming through Gevura, which is strength, they tend to be very powerful, very successful, often very confrontational. So each of the different energies has their own strengths, but their strength is also the place where they get stuck. And so you'll see somebody who's coming through a Gevura strength and they're very powerful, but they often, end up becoming very controlling. And I'm sure everyone knows somebody in their life who's very controlling. Chesed, kindness, we spoke about as well. And the same is true with the energy of success, Tiferet, that these people are very outgoing and they're very success oriented, but on the downside, they can also end up being very self-centered and also lacking vulnerability. So each one is kind of like a roadmap for your own personal growth. And through that journey, and you end up improving the relationship with yourself, but also your relationships improve because you learn to see other people no longer as kind of like just a projection of yourself, but you actually get to see the individuality and the uniqueness of every and so it fosters a lot more respect and understanding, be it in the workplace, be it with your team, or with your significant other or your children.
So if someone comes to you and they're like, "Hey, David, I'm having pain in this relationship realm of my life," what's your process with that person? Is there like a particular way you like to approach things, or it just kind of depends on the person? Like what would you say, or what would that first conversation be like?
So usually what I like to do when I work with couples or even individuals who are, struggling in relationship is I like to take them through a bit of this journey of kind of explaining the system, how it works, so that because it's kind of like a language, and the more you familiarize yourself with it, the more you can kind of express yourself through it. And so it's like we know what we know and we know what we don't know, but we don't know the things that we don't know. Like I know that I don't know Chinese. I don't know about like 8 or 9 different dimensions of the universe, like I know this thing called quantum physics, but there's so much else beyond that I don't even know that I don't know. And so most people aren't even aware that this kind of structure exists. And so I first like to take people through a general understanding of these different energies to help them get familiar with how it expresses in their own life, and through that understanding and in a very short amount of time you can help them understand, for example, a conflict in the relationship. It can help them understand where their partner's coming from, where they're coming from, and you can help people get their needs met a lot easier, because it's like with imagine like, air traffic control. Like the air above us is wide open, and yet there's a very clear set of flight paths, that air traffic controllers have carved through that. Imagine if that air traffic control didn't exist and just everyone was just trying to find their way through the heavens and, trying to avoid collisions as they come up to each other. It's very chaotic. But the same is happening in our day-to-day lives, in our day-to-day interactions, because we can't see those pathways. We don't see the flight paths. But when you learn how to understand the kind of the flight paths of behavior, all of a sudden it becomes a lot clearer, and you can see which road a person is coming on and the type of things that they see. You can understand what their experience is, and it creates a lot more empathy, a lot more understanding. So really the process is it's through talking, and I have a course that I take people through, and in a very short amount of time, people are able to come to a very deep understanding that really enables a lot more connection and a lot deeper understanding of themselves and the people in their lives.
So it sounds like step one, get a better understanding of your own energies, and then also these other 10 energies, and noticing them in other people around you. And then instead of trying to change other people's energies, how do you coach someone to kind of better interact with those different energies, or more gently guide those energies in a more productive way?
So I guess it would depend on the question that we're asking. Like, is the question that we're asking, how does somebody improve what aspect of their life? Like, is the question we're asking, how,
Relationships.
yeah, so how would somebody
Yeah.
improve the quality of their relationships? So I would say step one is, without even understanding any of the personality code, step one is, if you want to improve the quality of your relationships, your social relationships, your romantic relationships, the first thing to understand is that people are unique, and to notice your own tendency to maybe project or compare other people to yourself, and to understand that, while the way that you see the world is feels like the right way and the only way, all of a sudden, just sitting with the simple understanding that there are actually 10 different personality journeys, that awareness itself, that can bring down a lot of judgment. And so I would say the first rule in improving your relationships is moving from judgment to acceptance. Meaning, instead of judging other people and criticizing other people when they do something that contradicts or that goes against your preferred way of doing it, like, the way time is really the is the big one. I'll give you something that I think will be maybe more practical. One of the most challenging distinctions in behavior, I would say, are the two ways that people experience time. And this is another subset of the personality code. This is something that comes in from the teachings of Carl Jung, that there's two ways of experiencing time, right? We can experience time through our left brain. And so people who are left brain for time, they're very structured, very analytical, very organized, very on time. And then there are people who experience time through their right brain or their unconscious. And so these type of people tend to be, very creative, but they often tend to be they're often late, and because they're in this experience of time. And so they often tend to be late. They often tend to be, very agreeable and a lot happier than the left brain people. But there's a lot of friction that comes up. And a lot of times these two types of people attract each other, right? Because the left brain people, we call them judgers. So they're very organized and structured, but they also tend to be very stressed, and they often don't enjoy life that much. Whereas the people who are experiencing time through their right brain, we call them perceivers. They tend to actually be happier on a day-to-day basis, but they also tend to be late. And so these two opposites tend to attract, just like everywhere in life. And so in relationships, you often get one left brain, one judger, and a perceiver. And there's a lot of attraction between them, but they have completely different models for how to navigate time. And so when the perceiver is, they're usually 10 or 15 minutes late for everything, at least. And so when that happens, the judger, their partner, is like, they feel personally insulted. They're like, you don't respect my time. You don't respect me. And it's a real point of contention. And so just opening up that simple distinction and helping people understand that there are two actual ways to experience time, it gives freedom to both people to kind of learn how to balance out. And ultimately, I think that's what forms the basis of most of the romantic attraction, is that we all want balance. So if we're someone who is more introverted and we spend more time in our head, we tend to be often attracted to somebody who's more extroverted and likes to go out and meet people and be with people, and to have a desire to kind of balance out. The introverted person wants to be better with people. The extroverted person wants to develop a deeper self-awareness. And so all of these opposites tend to attract, and that creates friction. But just understanding that there are two ways of experiencing time, and they're both right, right? They're both right. Just because somebody's late, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. And so now it gives you a kind of a playing field to explore these ideas and explore these two ways of living on. And it gives people the tools to now kind of balance out. And so somebody who's a perceiver, who's right-brained for time, they can now learn to work on maybe being more punctual when it's required, because all of a sudden it's not about judgment. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. And I think that's the main friction point in relationships, is that it's always about judgment, and each person is trying to kind of prove to the other that I'm right and you're wrong. And every argument boils down to I'm right and I'm wrong. But if any argument now becomes, oh, I'm struggling with this because I see life this way and you see it that way, it now gives us a language to kind of work through those challenges and work towards becoming more flexible rather than getting stuck in judgment. So I would say step one in resolving any conflict in relationship is learning to move away from judgment. And even before you even understand the whole system, just actually moving out of judgment and being open to exploring, hey, I set a nice dinner for tonight at 8 and you didn't arrive till 8:45. And this is something that happens kind of repeatedly. And so I was curious, I'm curious, would you be open to exploring how you navigate time and how you kind of prepare yourself to make this appointment? And maybe together we could, you know, why you weren't on time, and maybe we could come to an understanding that would make it easy, because it's hard for me when you do. So being able to move away from judgment and to just openly be able to explore somebody else's reality as equally valid, I think that is step number one. And you can move a great distance in improving your relationship if you just start having those kind of conversations from a place of acceptance instead of judgment.
I really like that idea of having those conversations from a place of acceptance. I can see how that would be super helpful and would work in improving any type of relationship, personal relationship, family relationship. It's often harder to do in the moment. Like if there's a specific moment that happens to trigger you, it's harder to be more accepting. Maybe it's easier like 3 or 4 days later when, you think back like, yeah, maybe I overreacted to that situation. I didn't need to overreact. How does someone better able and enable themselves to be more accepting in the moment rather than having something like a confrontation or disappointment happen and then later reflect on it and be like, oh, I could have reacted better in that situation?
Sure. Great question. So this is the subject that I like to call triggers. And everybody gets triggered, right? Triggered is when something happens and you revert back to, you kind of, you become emotional, right? Whenever we get emotional and we lose control, I call that getting triggered. And what's being triggered? What's being triggered is place in ourselves that didn't get resolved when we were younger. Some were triggering some trauma, some unresolved pain that we carry with us. And we all have places where we get triggered into kind of reliving this powerful, overwhelming, often negative emotional experience. And what I always say is that the triggers are the gift. And more often than not, your significant relationship, your romantic relationship, is going to be the person who triggers you the most. And most of the time, right, you made me mad, right? Most of the time when something happens, it's like when we get triggered into this in this emotional state, it's not a good feeling, right? It's not a good feeling. We often feel like we've lost control, like we're out of control. And so a lot of times when that happens, we kind of direct our focus to the person who caused it, and we say, "Hey, don't do that. That made me angry." And we get angry at the person who caused us to be angry. And I always say that that's a missed opportunity, because really when somebody triggers you, they're actually giving you a really important and powerful gift, because they're giving you the gift of seeing a place within yourself where you are stuck, right? If anytime somebody is late, I actually had a client who he had a bicycle and a basket, and he was a very successful businessman, but when he would go out to ride his bicycle to work, so he would come out and there would be a empty water bottle in it. Somebody had just disposed of their water bottle in his bicycle basket. All right, but it made him so angry. It made him so
Yeah.
angry. He thought of like putting a sign and watching putting a camera, and if I could just stop this. But so often we all get caught up trying to control the world around us and the people around us in order to try to make life go our way. But inevitably, life will never go the way you plan, and inevitably, you will end up getting triggered. And the gift of those moments is that if something happens and you all of a sudden lose control of yourself, so that is a place where you are missing out the greatest potential for happiness, because this is a place where you're stuck. This is a place where you are not free, right? If any time somebody throws a piece of trash or treats me with any disrespect, I just lose it. I get angry. Well, how does the rest of your day go? It throws off your whole day. You feel horrible. And so this is exactly what was happening to him. And so we think that, if we could just control the people and the world around us, then life will be okay. But the truth is, it's the other way around. Life is going to go on its unpredictable up and down journey, and your greatest potential to enjoy life comes from being absolutely free to respond to the situations that present themselves to you from a place of consciousness, from a place of choice. But if every time somebody disrespects me in the slightest, I go off the handle, I become angry, I lose my happiness and I lose my control over my life. I go unconscious. And so when life or people trigger us, we go unconscious. And that is a tremendous gift, because they're shining a light on a place where we are not free, where we are a slave. We are a slave to this emotion. We are a slave to this situation. And we all have places like that in our life. And those places they're like black holes for happiness. And so the gift of these meaningful relationships in your life who trigger you is that it shines a light on the place where we are not free. And so next time, you find yourself flying off the handle, next time because it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen. Next time you feel it coming up and you feel in negative emotion taking over you, instead of directing your energy to the cause of it to try to, well, hey, don't do that anymore. What we can do is we can take responsibility. If we can take 100% responsibility and take ownership of everything that happens to us, that's the key to living a more fulfilling life and to improving your relationships. And so when something like that happens, if you can just take ownership of it and say, something's coming up, I'm starting to experience something, and to just give yourself a moment to experience. Hey, Alex, excuse me, I'm not sure, something in our conversation triggered something, and I'm feeling a lot of emotion right now. I think I need to disengage from this conversation for a few minutes and just kind of sit with and feel what's coming up for me. Could we continue a bit later? Rather than making somebody else responsible for how you feel, learning how to take 100% responsibility for our feelings and then being able to work through and grow through them. I think that's the most important key to learning how to reduce those points of friction, because inevitably when we're blaming other people, we're having the same fight over and over. We're not growing, and the growth is only able to happen in us. You can never change somebody else. We can only ever change ourselves, but we can only ever do that if we choose to take responsibility for what we are going through rather than blaming people or life or our boss for it.
But David, throwing trash in someone's bicycle basket is a pretty crappy and inconsiderate thing to do.
1,000%. And I've personally have committed to stopping, to not doing it anymore. And thank you for being a mirror for me on how I can grow. You're right. It's not acceptable. And I'm making a commitment here in front of the world to stop littering in other people's.
Yeah, I'd be pretty pissed too, man. I mean, but I like what you said there, because it made me think, allowing myself to get angry in that situations, and the times that I have allowed myself to get angry, it doesn't stay contained, or it actually often will bleed into other, like the next event in my life. Like if my family's calling me to dinner, or like I'm having dinner with other people, like there's still that, if I'm going to be holding that anger into that next scenario that my life calls me to. And that has happened. And I like the idea of taking ownership for those feelings and not blaming the external environment, because really we are choosing to feel that way.
Absolutely. And I would say, like, not only does it spill over, it'll probably ruin your day, and we have all that energy when we don't learn how to take responsibility for our own emotions, because we honestly believe that, this person who threw the trash in the bicycle, that person caused me to feel that way. And if they hadn't done that, then I wouldn't feel this way. So people are walking around thinking that they're other people are causing them to feel this way, when the truth is you are 100% responsible for how you feel, which is great, because if somebody else can determine how I feel, then who's in control of your life? If how you feel is dependent on whether or not I show up on time for dinner, and if I'm late, then that's going to upset you. Well, who's in charge of your life, Alex? You're not. I am, right? I determine how you feel. And it's a very powerful, and I think unconsciously, that's really where all of the anger and the frustration comes from when we have these moments, when we get triggered, is because we intuit that there's a place in life where we are not in control of ourselves, where we're giving up control. And that it's a very powerless feeling to not be in control of how you feel, and to be so weak that somebody else can manipulate us. And it's a very powerless feeling. And I think the anger that we feel in those moments is actually directed at ourselves. We are angry that we are giving up control of our life to someone or something else. And so this is really the way to take your power back, to really access all of the power. And if you want to achieve anything else in your life, if you want to, increase your financial success, if you want to start your own business, if you want to improve the quality of your relationships, or you want to attract amazing relationships, if you want to get in shape and improve your health, no matter what change you want in your life, if life is not going 1000% the way you want it to go, and you endeavor to improve your life somehow, you need to take 100% control of your life. And unless you are able to be in control of yourself, meaning in control of how you respond to the world, you won't be able to create the kind of life that you want. And you might be able to in some areas, but no matter what, at some point, an area of life will show up where you're not in control. And so that's why I say, if we want to improve our lives, we have to take 100% responsibility for everything that happens to us, for everything that we experience, because that's the only way to take control back. And that's why whoever is pissing you off, if it's the guy throwing the trash, that guy's your best friend. Instead of getting angry at that guy, I want to find that guy because I want to thank him, because I didn't realize how much of my own power I was giving up to people who didn't respect me. And now I got a chance to look at all of this. And yeah, I see I wasn't given a lot of respect as a child. My power was taken from me as a child. But now this is the opportunity for me to take that power back myself and to not get angry and to learn to accept the things that happen in life rather than judge them, because that's the place where we actually have control. We don't have any control over what happens in life. Unfortunately, society has kind of raised us to believe that, we have this illusion of control. And so if somebody's mean to you or endangers you, you can call the police, or if there's a fire, you call the fire department. All of that is great. But the unfortunate thing is it causes us to have this unnatural sense of control. And the truth is we have no control over anything. We think, I can control my life. I have a job. I'm getting a regular paycheck. And all this structure in our life leads us to believe that we have a sense of control. But the truth is we don't control anything, Alex. We don't control what happens, when it happens. And learning how to let go and recognizing that the only thing that I control is how I respond to life. And when I am able to take 100% responsibility for the way I respond, and I no longer blame other people for causing the reaction in me, but I take responsibility, all of a sudden life becomes a lot better, because now I have the opportunity to discover where am I just giving up my control, and how can I take that power back? And how can I learn to build new skills and heal this part of myself that obviously needs healing and attention, rather than direct my attention away from it and to try to pretend that side of me doesn't exist.
What would you say, or how would you work with someone who is still adamant that that external thing caused me to feel a certain way?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Because you can't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can feed a person poetry, but you can't make them think. The only person that we can change is ourselves. So if somebody is adamant that this is how it is and this is how it is, and that's how they are. And this is actually, you bring up a very good point in relationships, is that we can only ever change ourselves. So what do you do? Because it sounds like the background of the question you're asking is, what do we do if I'm in a relationship with someone who's not as committed to their own development as I am? And so I'm going to have this conversation, let's take responsibility, but the other person isn't ready to have that conversation. They're not, they don't buy into it. They don't believe that it's true. And so Yeah, so you can't have that conversation. And so this is the challenge, is that it's kind of like communication, right? If you want to communicate effectively, so you have to communicate in the language of the person who you want to receive the message. Meaning, well, first and foremost, I gotta speak the right language. If the person speaks English, and I want to deliver a message to them, I want to communicate with them, I need to speak in English. But more deeply is, if I want to engage with somebody, I need to engage with them in their in their kind of worldview. I'll give you an example. I had a friend once, and this friend's mother was older, and they were very British and very proper, and everything had to be planned. And spontaneously, my friend decided to have a barbecue with his family on Sunday, and he calls up his mother and he says, "Hey, Mom, we're having a barbecue in a couple of hours. We'd love if you would come." And now their mother was, "Well, do you think that on a Sunday afternoon I have not already planned my entire day, all right, full of things? Do you think that I could just drop everything and come to your barbecue? Do you really think?" Right? I'm like, and bro is like, my friend is like, okay, like, he expected her to say something like, "Oh, how nice, that would be lovely. I would love to come. I actually have no plans," or, "Unfortunately, I have something else to do," right? That would be the anticipated response. But she is in this world of, this, and we're all in our own subjective worlds. We're all living in our own kind of made up world about who we are. And so, yes, hopefully we're interacting on, and this is kind of like the conversation that we started the show with, which is the journey of, evolving our consciousness, growing beyond the invisible prison of personality, growing beyond the way of, like, "I'm David Bederman, I am this way, and this is the right way, and I respond to situations in the way that I know, and I'm right, and everyone else is wrong." It's like, no, there are so many different ways of experiencing life, and my goal is to become as flexible as I can, so that, I can, oh, maybe this person is being powerful and confrontational, so I can take what's the easiest way to diffuse a situation? Maybe somebody close to you is a bit of a control freak. And so the way to diffuse situations is not to fight every time, it's just to take the back seats. So if the goal is evolution, and the journey of evolution is achieved through consciousness, becoming more conscious and more aware. And so as we're on that journey, if we really want to grow, we have to realize that people are important, relationships are important. And if you're on a journey of growth, at some point or another, you're going to notice that the people around you may not match the trajectory of your evolution. And so you may find that, you're becoming more self-aware, you're ready to take more responsibility for yourself. And yet some of the relationships, the people in your life, they're not at the same place. So what do I do? And the challenge is that we have to meet people where they are, and we can never change somebody else. The only person that we can change is ourselves. And so if you're endeavoring to grow, then I would say work on yourself. And then if somebody is just not willing to have that conversation with you, then you can continue to grow and to continue to give as much space to them as you're able. And at some point, maybe your evolution will trigger an awakening in them, and they'll be like, "Wow, you've changed, Alex, and I'm really inspired by your change." Or often what happens is, when we grow, a lot of times the people in our life want us to be the person that we were. If all of a sudden you're somebody who was very giving for many years, and now you're learning how to take a stand and draw boundaries, oftentimes the people that you've surrounded yourself, they don't like being told no. They much prefer you being the yes person. And so that can create conflict. And so the beautiful thing is, Alex, that we live in a magnetic universe, and we are always attracting people and situations that are 100% correct for our evolution. And it could be that, at times we outgrow certain relationships. And it can be at times that every relationship is always the perfect opportunity for our growth. And so if somebody's there and you're here, well, it doesn't, you're not better than them. This is just an opportunity for you to learn how to communicate effectively to someone in the place where they are.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And this, what you said just now, it takes us back to our earlier conversation of how we create our own reality. That wisdom there, and I love that so much. David, if people want to work with you or just have a chat with you, how do they reach you? What's the best way to do that?
The best way to connect with me is via Instagram, David Bederman, DavidBederman, or my website, personalitycode.me. But Instagram is the best way if you want to pop a link up there for people.
Awesome. Well, David, thank you so much. Always love talking to you. Really appreciated having you on the show.
Alex, thanks so much for taking the time. I really love that you're enabling conversations like this to happen. I really believe that people are there's so many people on a growth journey today, and it's really valuable that you're enabling conversations like this to happen. So I enjoyed it very much. So thanks for having me, and thanks for taking the time.